7 silent signals they're already in love with you. Most people miss these. Psychology tricks. Love is composed of a single soul inhabiting two bodies. Aristotle. Sometimes love doesn't arrive with noise or grand gestures. Sometimes it arrives as a whisper. There are people who love quietly, not because they feel less, but because they feel deeply, especially grown men. They've learned restraint. They don't want to create pressure. They don't want to disrupt the calm connection they already share. So instead of words, they choose actions. Instead of declarations, they offer presence. You might assume they don't feel much at all, but their eyes tell a different story. Their lips stay silent, yet the way they look at you speaks volumes. Real love isn't always dramatic. Often it's gentle, patient, hidden inside ordinary moments. Have you ever sensed that someone truly cares about you, even though they've never said it out loud? They don't confess. They never say, "I love you," but there's something unmistakable in the way they look at you, in how closely they listen when you speak, in how they notice things about you that no one else ever does. Maybe it's how they remember small details, your favorite words, your habits. Maybe it's the way they smile the moment you walk into the room, or how their expression softens when they talk to you. And maybe, without fully understanding why, you feel safe around them, as if your soul already knows something your mind hasn't accepted yet. Love doesn't always arrive like fireworks. Sometimes it arrives quietly, hoping you'll notice. Here are 7 silent signals that someone is already in love with you, and most people completely miss them. Sign 1. They look at you when you're not watching. Here's the truth most people never tell you, especially men who have lived long enough to know that love is rarely loud and almost never obvious. One of the clearest signs someone is already in love with you is the way they look at you when they believe you aren't watching, because that glance is unguarded, honest, and unpolished. And when you catch it and they turn away too fast, don't brush it off as coincidence. Don't joke it away. Don't minimize it, because that moment wasn't random. That was emotion scrambling for cover. That was feeling trying not to be exposed. And in the quiet language of human behavior, especially when you understand psychology tricks and female psychology, the eyes confess long before the mouth dares to. What they're really doing in those moments is studying you without permission, not in a creepy way, but in a deeply human way, because they admire you silently. The rhythm of your voice, the way your laugh escapes before you can control it, how you pause when you think, how you sit when your guard is down. And they don't just notice these things once, they catalog them, they store them away like something precious. Because when someone is falling for you, they pay attention to details no one else bothers to see. The small habits, the comfort gestures, the expressions you don't even realize you make. They remember them without effort, not because they're trying to impress you, but because their mind keeps returning to you on its own. And even if their words stay casual and their behavior seems normal, their eyes keep telling the truth over and over again. Because eyes don't lie well. They linger, they soften, they warm, they give themselves away. Sometimes love doesn't rush toward you with declarations and promises. Sometimes love stands still and watches, learning you, respecting you, waiting. That's why they sit near you without needing a reason. That's why they stay a little longer in conversations that could have ended minutes ago. That's why they don't interrupt you or rush to fill silence, because being close is already enough. Don't expect a confession, not yet, because fear often walks beside affection, especially for someone who feels deeply. But notice the way their gaze rests on you, not sharp, not demanding, but gentle, like they're holding something fragile. Because in that look lives everything they're afraid to say out loud. And if you understand how to fall in love from a psychological standpoint, you know that people reveal their attachment through attention long before action. Here's the part most men miss. When you leave the room and you feel that subtle pause behind you, that extra second before movement resumes, that's when they look again. Longer this time, deeper, not hoping to be caught, but hoping to be seen. Hoping you might turn back once, not to confront them, but to notice them, because being noticed feels safer than being exposed. This isn't manipulation. It isn't strategy. It's instinct. rooted in female psychology and human vulnerability. And if you've ever wondered why some connections feel heavy even without words, this is why. Emotional energy doesn't need noise, it needs presence. The person who watches you when you're unaware often feels more than the one who looks when you expect it. Because expectation invites performance, but unobserved moments reveal truth. Don't dismiss this as imagination or romantic fantasy. Be observant, be grounded, be calm. Psychology tricks aren't about control. They're about understanding patterns that already exist. When someone's attention keeps drifting back to you without effort, when their eyes search for you before their mind catches up, that's attachment forming quietly. That's affection growing roots. And if you're asking how to fall in love or how love actually begins, this is it. Not fireworks, not speeches, but awareness, repetition, and emotional investment. You must understand this clearly. People protect what matters to them, sometimes by staying silent, sometimes by watching from a distance. That doesn't make their feelings smaller. It often makes it deeper, because restraint usually comes from care, not indifference. In the world of psychology tricks and female psychology, attention is currency, time is proof, and unguarded glances are confessions. So don't rush. Don't force clarity where patience is needed. Don't demand words when actions are still unfolding. Be steady. Be respectful. Be present. Because love that begins in quiet observation often grows into something lasting, something intentional, something strong without being loud. And once you learn to read these signals, once you truly understand how to fall in love by recognizing emotional truth instead of chasing surface behavior, you'll realize the eyes have been telling the story all along. You just needed to slow down enough to listen. Sign 2, they remember the smallest things about you. Sign 2 is quieter than words and stronger than promises, and most people miss it because they're looking for fireworks instead of fingerprints. They remember the smallest things about you, not the obvious facts, not the stories you repeat, the tiny details, the ones you mentioned once and forgot you ever said out loud. Love hides in details, in the things most people overlook or dismiss as unimportant. Maybe weeks ago, you casually mentioned your favorite snack, a random childhood memory, or the song you listen to when you feel low. You didn't frame it as important. You didn't ask them to remember. And yet, weeks later, without prompting, they bring it up again. It stops you for a second. You pause. You think, how did they remember that? That reaction matters. Because people don't remember what they don't value. This isn't coincidence. This is attention with intention. When someone loves you silently, nothing about you feels small to them. Not your passing comments, not your offhand memories, not the things you say when you're tired or distracted. To them, your words don't drift away like background noise. They stay. They're held. They're stored carefully, like something worth protecting. Every detail you share becomes a piece of you they want to keep, not to use, not to show off, but to understand you better. Be clear about this. Memory is not about intelligence here. It's about emotional investment. People remember what their heart is involved in. They remember because they care. Notice how deep it goes. They don't just remember facts. They remember the tone of your voice when you're excited, the slight change when you talk about something that matters to you, the silence you carry when something hurts, but you don't want to explain it. They remember how your eyes look when you're speaking honestly, when you're not performing, when you're being real. They notice mood shifts others miss completely. A shorter reply, a slower smile, a pause that lasts just a bit too long. Don't ignore that. Be aware. That level of attention doesn't come from curiosity. It comes from connection. They sense when you're pretending to be okay, not because they're guessing, but because they've been paying attention for a long time. They text you at the exact moment you needed someone, not because they planned it, but because they felt it. That timing feels uncanny, almost unsettling. But it's not magic. It's emotional alignment. They show up in ways others don't, quietly, consistently, without making noise about it. This is affection in disguise. This is what love looks like when it doesn't announce itself. And here's where this matters to you as a man, especially as a man who wants to become a high-value man, not in status, but in presence. A high-value man understands that attention is rare. He doesn't chase noise. He reads patterns. He notices behavior. He knows that remembering details is one of the clearest signs of emotional attachment, especially when no reward is expected. Don't dismiss it as friendliness. Don't downplay it as coincidence. Be grounded. Be observant. Because when someone remembers you this way, their heart is already involved, whether they admit it or not. And that kind of care doesn't come from trying to attract women strategically. It comes from genuine connection, responding to masculine energy that feels safe, steady, and authentic. This is quiet love, the kind that listens deeply, the kind that pays attention without demanding credit, the kind that doesn't interrupt, doesn't correct, doesn't compete. It simply absorbs, it remembers, and it holds space. They don't remind you they remembered. They don't announce their effort. They don't expect praise. That's important. Because real affection doesn't keep score. It doesn't say, "Look what I did for you." It says, "I see you," without saying it at all. Be careful here. Loud interest fades quickly. Quiet care lasts. This is why so many men miss it. They're trained to look for bold signals, dramatic gestures, obvious desire. But love doesn't always show itself that way, especially with emotionally intelligent people. Sometimes love whispers, sometimes it waits. If you're focused on becoming a high-value man who can attract women naturally, you must understand this principle deeply. People invest attention where they feel emotional safety and respect. Masculine energy, when healthy, isn't aggressive or performative. It's calm, it's grounded, it listens without rushing to fix. That energy invites someone to open up, to share details, to speak freely. And once they do, once they feel heard, they remember you too. This is a mirror. The more present you are, the more present they become. The more attentive you are, the more attentive they respond. That is how attraction builds quietly and powerfully. And don't confuse this with obligation or dependency. This isn't someone clinging. This is someone choosing to care, choosing to notice, choosing to remember. That choice is meaningful. That choice is rare. When someone holds your words like treasure, it's because they value the source. When they remember how you feel, not just what you say, it's because they're emotionally invested. And investment always reveals itself over time, not in bursts, but in consistency. Be patient enough to see it. Be mature enough to respect it. Don't rush them into confession. Don't pressure them for clarity. Let actions speak. Let patterns repeat. Let time confirm what attention already suggests. This kind of love hopes quietly. It hopes that one day you'll realize someone out there cherishes every piece of you, not just the polished version, not just the confident moments, but the small, unguarded parts too. The details you forgot you shared, the emotions you tried to hide, the moments you thought didn't matter. They mattered, and they were remembered. If you want to attract women in a way that leads to depth, not chaos, you must learn to recognize this signal and honor it. Be steady, be respectful, be intentional. Masculine energy isn't about chasing love. It's about being present enough to recognize it when it's already there. If this spoke to you, don't just scroll past it. Like the video, subscribe for more psychology tricks most people never notice, and share it with someone who needs clarity instead of confusion. Now engage with the channel by commenting this sentence below and let it sink in every time you read it again. Quiet love remembers what the world forgets. Sign 3. They try hard not to show they care, but they still do. Here's the truth most men miss, and it's time you hear it clearly. Without softness, without confusion, without fantasy. When someone is already in love with you, they rarely announce it, they reveal it. And the revelation comes through restraint, through control, through actions that contradict their words. Because love that feels risky does not rush forward. It measures every step, and that is the signal you must learn to read if you want mastery in modern relationships and mastery in life. There is a specific pattern here, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. They try hard not to show they care, yet they always do. Because fear does not erase emotion, it only disguises it. Fear of losing you, fear of rejection, fear of disrupting what already exists. And so, instead of confession, you get consistency. Instead of declarations, you get presence. Instead of poetry, you get effort. Small moves executed quietly, the kind of moves most people overlook because they are trained to listen to words instead of studying behavior, and that mistake costs men clarity, leverage, and peace. They say they were just checking in, but the check-in came because your silence mattered to them. They say they were just passing by, but timing like that is never accidental. They offer help as if it's nothing, but they would not lift a finger if you were irrelevant. This is not imagination, this is psychology. As Carl Jung warned, what you resist not only persists, but grows in size. And when someone resists showing care, the care leaks out everywhere else. Their mind tries to stay composed, but their heart keeps showing up. They pull back, not because interest faded, but because they are measuring your response. They test distance to see if closeness still exists. They joke to keep the moment light because seriousness would expose them. They stay calm on the surface, but you can feel the tension when you mention someone else. Not jealousy that explodes, jealousy that tightens, quiet, controlled, focused. That is not a lack of feeling. That is discipline battling emotion, and that battle is ancient, something old Stoic wisdom has described for centuries. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts," and here the thoughts are constant, restrained, disciplined attention toward you, even when they refuse to name it. This kind of love is not loud. It does not chase validation. It waits. It watches. It hopes you notice what is being done without being announced. And if you're asking yourself whether you're imagining it, that question itself is your answer, because obvious indifference never creates confusion, only concealed care does. In modern life, where attention is cheap and words are everywhere, restraint is rare, and rarity signals value. Men who understand Stoicism win here because they don't beg for clarity. They observe patterns. They don't confront emotion prematurely. They let behavior speak. They don't panic when someone pulls back. They recognize it as a test, not a retreat. This is where the iron mind is built, not through guessing games, but through calm observation and self-command. You don't rush them. You don't pressure them. You continue living fully, decisively grounded, because nothing draws hidden affection into the open faster than strength paired with patience. Seneca said it cleanly, "He who is brave is free." And freedom here means you are not desperate for answers. You are confident in your reading of reality. Their repeated presence is not random. Their concern disguised as politeness is not coincidence. Their emotional flinch when you drift is not imaginary. These are signals aligned, layered, consistent, and consistency is the language of truth. In a world obsessed with immediate gratification, this kind of love moves slowly, cautiously, deliberately. And that slowness is not a flaw, it is proof of depth. Men between 35 and 70 especially must understand this, because experience should sharpen perception, not dull it. You've seen enough life to know that real things don't announce themselves with fireworks. They reveal themselves with reliability. If you want mastery, stop asking for verbal confirmation and start tracking behavior over time. If you want peace, stop chasing certainty and start trusting patterns. If you want victory in love and life, embody the same discipline you respect in others. Old Stoic wisdom teaches this. Stoicism Win is built on this. An iron mind thrives on this. When you move calmly, observe quietly, and act deliberately, you don't miss signals. You read them. You don't overreact. You respond, and you don't fear silence. You understand it. Love often whispers. Power listens. Sign 4. They get jealous quietly even when they try to hide it. Sign 4 is the kind most men miss, not because it isn't real, but because it's silent, subtle, and wrapped in restraint, quiet jealousy. This is not the kind that raises its voice or asks questions it already knows the answer to, and you must understand this clearly. They won't tell you to stop talking to someone else. Don't expect a warning. Don't expect a claim. Be observant instead. Watch what happens when another person makes you laugh a little longer than usual, when someone else holds your attention for just a moment too much. They won't interrupt. They won't complain. That is exactly the point. Their face may still smile, polite, composed, even warm, but something inside them tightens, almost imperceptibly, like a muscle holding a breath. Their eyes change first. Be aware of that. The gaze softens, then dims, not in anger, but in quiet calculation. They look away a second longer than necessary. They listen more than they speak. That silence is not disinterest. Don't confuse it. It's protection, it's restraint, it's the emotional discipline of someone who feels deeply but refuses to make it your burden. This is where psychology tricks often fail men, because we're taught to look for noise, for confrontation, for declarations. But female psychology works differently when feelings are real. When love is still unspoken, jealousy doesn't shout, it retreats, it observes, it waits. They suddenly become more aware of who you're talking to, not in a controlling way, but in a quiet, almost involuntary tracking of relevance. Who makes you laugh? Who you respond to quickly? Who gets your energy when they don't? You'll notice it in the pause before they reply to you, just a fraction longer than usual. Don't ignore that pause. That is emotional processing happening in real time. They're not upset with you. Be clear about that. They are negotiating their own feelings, weighing desire against dignity. When they smile and look away, pretending it doesn't matter, it does. It matters deeply. But they won't say it, because saying it would expose how much you already mean to them, and exposure feels risky when love isn't secure yet. This is where understanding how to fall in love actually works on a psychological level. Attraction grows fastest in safety, not pressure. They fear losing you loudly on the inside, while loving you silently on the outside. So they stay calm, they act normal, they wait for you to come back to them, not physically but emotionally. Notice how, after you've been engaged with someone else, they become more present when you return. They listen closer, they ask softer questions, they anchor themselves back into your orbit. That is not coincidence. That is attachment reasserting itself without words. Jealousy in its mature form isn't about possession. Be clear, it's about value. And when someone values you deeply, they feel the shift when your attention drifts, even briefly. This is why psychology tricks that rely on provocation or games often backfire with emotionally intelligent people. They won't chase harder. They'll withdraw slightly instead, preserving self-respect while quietly hoping you choose them without being asked. That long blink you catch when you mention someone else, that's not boredom. That's regulation. That deep breath they take before responding, that's emotion being folded neatly away. Don't underestimate the meaning of restraint. In female psychology, restraint is often the loudest confession available before words feel safe. If you want to know how to fall in love without forcing it, pay attention to these moments. Don't test them. Don't exploit them. Be present. Be consistent. That is how trust grows. And when trust grows, silence eventually turns into honesty. Jealousy like this isn't dramatic. It's tender. It's controlled. It's the quiet ache that whispers, not demands. You matter more to me than I'm ready to admit. When you understand that, you stop looking for loud signals and start respecting quiet ones. That is maturity. That is emotional intelligence. That is how real connection forms, not through pressure, but through awareness, patience, and the humility to notice what isn't being said. If this hit closer than you expected, don't scroll past it. Be intentional. Like the video, subscribe for more psychology tricks that decode female psychology and show you how to fall in love without guessing or forcing it. And here's the real move. Go to the comments and write this sentence to lock the lesson in your mind and spark the conversation. Real feelings don't shout, they reveal themselves in silence. Sign 5. They show up when you need someone most. Sign 5 is one of the clearest, quietest signals of all, and yet most people miss it because they're looking for fireworks instead of presence. They show up when you need someone most. You don't even have to ask. They just appear. Maybe it's a late-night message when you're breaking inside, when the house is quiet and your thoughts are loud. Or maybe it's a simple, "Are you okay?" on the exact day you needed it most. Not dramatic, not strategic, just right on time. That is not luck. That is awareness. That is someone paying attention to your emotional weather, even when you haven't spoken a word. Many men misunderstand this moment because they expect love to arrive loudly, wrapped in certainty and celebration. But real connection often arrives softly, without announcement, like someone pulling up a chair beside you when the room feels too heavy to sit in alone. They might not express love with grand gestures. They may never make a show of it. But they show up when the world feels heavy, when the noise gets loud, when your confidence dips and your guard is down. Be honest with yourself here. Anyone can be present when life is smooth, when you're confident, laughing, successful, and fully in your stride. That part is easy. The rare signal appears when you withdraw, when your replies get shorter, when your energy drops. They notice when you go silent. They don't punish you for it. They don't demand explanations. They check on you instead. That matters. That says something deep about emotional attunement and respect. And it's something a high-value man should recognize immediately because it mirrors the same calm awareness he brings into his own life. They sense your pain even through a short text, a single word, a delayed response, a shift in tone. They don't need paragraphs to understand that something is off. That isn't mind reading. That is emotional intelligence paired with care. And no, it doesn't mean they want to fix you. They don't rush in with solutions. They don't overwhelm you with advice. They simply stay connected. They listen when you speak, but they listen even deeper when you don't. That is a subtle but powerful distinction. Anyone can hear words. Very few people hear silence. And when someone treats your quiet like communication instead of distance, that is not accidental. You'll notice they treat your sadness like their own, not by absorbing it or making it about themselves, but by respecting it. They don't dismiss it. They don't minimize it. They don't rush you past it. They hold space for it. That is rare. That is mature. That is something a man grounded in masculine energy should both recognize and reciprocate, because grounded strength isn't loud or forceful. It's steady. It's present. It knows when to speak and when to simply stay. They don't fix everything. That's important. Don't confuse presence with problem solving. They just make you feel less alone. And in moments of emotional weight, that is often the greatest gift available. Loneliness doesn't come from being alone. It comes from feeling unseen while you are struggling. When someone quietly reduces that feeling just by staying, just by being there, just by reminding you that you don't have to carry everything by yourself, that is not small. That is profound. Silent love doesn't shout, it doesn't perform, it doesn't seek applause. It stands beside you quietly and says, "I'm here." Not once, not loudly, but consistently, especially when it would be easier to disappear, especially when the mood is heavy, especially when you're not at your best. Don't overlook that. Don't minimize it. Don't dismiss it because it doesn't look like what movies taught you love should look like. Reality is calmer than fiction. Deeper too. If someone never leaves when it's dark, if they stay through silence instead of only sunshine, that's not a coincidence. That's love, quietly hoping you see it, quietly hoping you feel safe enough to recognize it without needing it to be proven again and again. This is where many men get it wrong. They look for validation instead of consistency. They look for reassurance instead of reliability. But a man who understands how to attract women at a deeper level knows that emotional safety matters more than emotional intensity. Be clear with yourself here. Attraction built on excitement alone fades. Attraction built on presence lasts. A high-value man doesn't chase drama. He values steadiness. He notices who shows up when the energy drops, not just when it rises. He understands that real feminine interest often reveals itself through care rather than confession, through consistency rather than performance. That is part of understanding masculine energy properly, not as force or control, but as grounded leadership of self. Don't test this. Don't manufacture silence to see if they'll chase you. That's insecurity pretending to be strategy. Be authentic instead. Be observant. Let moments unfold naturally. When you're genuinely quiet because life is heavy, notice who checks in without being prompted. Notice who stays without pressure. Notice who doesn't demand access to your emotions but respects them. That is information. Valuable information. A man who wants to attract women without losing himself doesn't overlook patterns like this. He doesn't rush to label them either. He simply sees them clearly and responds with equal presence, not neediness, not withdrawal. Presence, calm, respect. That balance is magnetic. That balance signals emotional maturity. That balance is masculine energy in its most grounded form. Be careful not to confuse attention with care. Attention is loud. Care is quiet. Attention wants to be seen. Care is already watching. Attention disappears when it's inconvenient. Care adjusts and stays. And when someone chooses to stay with you in your quiet moments, that choice matters more than words spoken in excitement. You must also understand this. People don't invest emotional energy where they feel unsafe or uninterested. Showing up during your low moments requires empathy, patience, and emotional courage. Those aren't casual traits. Those don't appear randomly. They grow where attachment already exists. That doesn't mean obligation. It means connection. For a high-value man, recognizing this signal is not about clinging to it or relying on it. It's about respecting it. It's about understanding that attraction deepens through trust, not pressure, through steadiness, not interrogation, through emotional honesty, not performance. When you embody that, you naturally attract women who are capable of this kind of quiet care because, attracts at deeper levels than most people realize. Don't ignore who shows up when it's dark. Don't chase those who only shine when things are easy. Be wise, be calm, be present. That is how you build connections that don't collapse under pressure. That is how you move through relationships with clarity instead of confusion. That is how masculine energy becomes stabilizing rather than exhausting. If someone stays through your silence, if they remain when there's nothing to gain, if they offer presence instead of demands, understand what you're seeing. That is love speaking softly, and it doesn't need to shout to be real. Sign 6. They notice your changes before you mention them. When a woman notices your changes before you ever mention them, you are witnessing one of the clearest, quietest, and most overlooked signals of real love. Because true attachment doesn't wait for explanations. It reads patterns. It tracks energy. It listens beneath the surface. And in modern life, where most people are distracted, rushed, and glued to noise, this kind of awareness is rare and powerful. Men between 35 and 70 need to understand this clearly, because at this stage of life, you've learned that words lie, appearances deceive, and consistency reveals truth. When she senses something is off before you say a single word, before you complain, before you explain, before you even fully understand it yourself, that's not coincidence. That's emotional intelligence sharpened by care. Because love that runs deep doesn't ask for updates. It observes shifts. It notices the pause before your reply, the shorter laugh, the missing humor, the slower response, the tired eyes, the way your tone flattens. As Carl Jung said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. That reaction shows up in silence long before it shows up in speech. This is where most men misread the situation, because they're trained to look for grand gestures, loud declarations, dramatic displays. But real love, especially mature love, doesn't shout. It scans. It adapts. It senses. It moves quietly. When she asks, "Are you okay?" Not because you said something, but because she felt something, that is emotional alignment. That is attunement. That is one nervous system responding to another. You don't get that from casual interest. You don't get that from surface attraction. You get that from presence over time, from attention paid consistently, from care that has settled into the bones. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." When someone loves you quietly, their thoughts include you even when you're not speaking, even when you're withdrawn, even when you're carrying weight alone. They notice when your energy shifts from calm to distant, from light to heavy, from open to closed, and they don't need you to announce it because they are already listening. This is where Old Stoic wisdom comes in. Stoicism teaches us to observe reality as it is, not as we wish it to be. And the reality is this: love reveals itself in attention, not promises, in awareness, not performance, in steadiness, not chaos. Men who build an iron mind learn to value signals over stories, patterns over passion, behavior over fantasy. If you've lived long enough, you know that someone who notices when you're tired, even while you say, "I'm fine," is someone whose concern runs deeper than politeness. Politeness stops at words. Love continues into silence. William James said, "The deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated." Being noticed without asking is appreciation in its purest form, especially in a world where most people only listen long enough to reply, not long enough to understand. Here is the instruction you need to hear clearly. Do not dismiss this signal. Do not minimize it. Do not take it for granted. When someone feels your silence more than your presence, when they sense the change in your eyes before you speak a word, when they ask questions not to pry but to protect, that is emotional investment. Emotional investment is the foundation of lasting connection, not excitement, not drama, not intensity. This matters even more in modern life, where men are under constant pressure to perform, provide, endure, and stay composed. When you've trained yourself to carry burdens quietly, the person who notices the weight without being told is showing you they are walking beside you even when the road is quiet. This is where Stoicism win becomes real. Stoicism is not about suppressing feeling. It's about clarity, discipline, and choosing what deserves your energy. A man with an iron mind does not chase validation. He evaluates alignment. He watches who pays attention when there's nothing to gain, who notices when there's nothing to show, who stays engaged when you're not entertaining. This signal is not flashy. It won't impress your friends. It won't dominate social media, but it will steady your life. Love that understands without explanation is the kind that lasts through illness, through aging, through loss, through quiet seasons. Leo Tolstoy wrote, "Where there is love, there is life." Life is not lived in highlight reels. It's lived in ordinary days, subtle moods, quiet mornings, and tired evenings. If someone notices you there, really notices you there, you are seen, and being seen is rare. The advice is simple but demanding. Respect this kind of love. Protect it. Don't test it with games. Don't ignore it because it's calm. Don't mistake peace for boredom. Men who master life understand this truth. Stability is power. Awareness is strength. Consistency is victory. This is old Stoic wisdom applied to modern relationships. The Stoics taught that what matters most is often quiet, internal, invisible to the crowd. If you want to win at life, not just chase moments, you must train yourself to recognize depth when it appears softly. Loud love fades. Intuitive love endures. Epictetus reminded us, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Love that notices your unspoken changes is embodied care, not explained care. When you encounter it, your task as a man is not to question it, but to rise to it. Meet it with presence, integrity, and strength. Build an iron mind that doesn't sabotage peace. Practice Stoicism win by choosing what is real over what is exciting. Apply Old Stoic wisdom by valuing the person who understands your silence, because that understanding is not accidental. It is earned, it is chosen, and it is love, quiet, steady, intuitive love. The kind that builds a strong life rather than just a thrilling chapter. That is the signal most people miss. The wise never do. If this message resonated with you, take a moment to support the channel. Like this video, share it with someone who needs clarity in their relationships, and subscribe for more psychology-backed wisdom and real-life insight. Now here's the important part. Engage with the message so it stays with you. Comment this affirmation below to lock it in and remind yourself of what real connection looks like. I recognize quiet love. I value presence, awareness, and emotional depth. Drop that statement in the comments now. It reinforces the lesson, strengthens your mindset, and connects you with others who understand that true love doesn't shout, it understands. Sign 7. They imagine a future with you but say it casually. Sign 7 is the one most people miss because it never arrives loudly, never knocks on the door, and never demands attention. yet it quietly reveals everything. That is when they begin to imagine a future with you, but speak about it as if it were nothing at all, as if it just slipped out by accident, as if they didn't notice it themselves. They won't say, "I want a life with you," not directly, not clearly, not yet. Instead, you'll hear it hidden inside soft phrases and passing comments, and if you listen closely, you'll catch it. One day they'll say something like, "We should go there together sometime," not with urgency, not with drama, just casually, as if it were a simple idea. Later they might smile and say, "You'd look amazing in a house full of plants," or "That place feels like something you'd love." Those sentences may sound small, even ordinary, but don't be fooled, because those are not random thoughts. Those are future images forming quietly in their mind. This is where psychology tricks become useful, because human beings don't imagine shared tomorrows with people who are temporary in their lives. They don't mentally place someone into scenes that haven't happened yet, unless that person already feels emotionally permanent. That is how female psychology often works when emotions deepen, not through bold declarations, but through subtle integration, gently placing you into the landscape of their future without asking permission and without making it a big deal. Making it casual feels safer. You must understand this clearly. People protect what matters to them by wrapping it in softness, not by exposing it too early. So when they talk about trips you'll take, places you'll visit, and moments you haven't lived yet, they are revealing attachment in its most honest form. Imagination is intimate. Imagination is vulnerable. Imagination is where love practices before it speaks. When they remember small dreams you once mentioned, something you said months ago in passing, and bring it back into the conversation as if it never left their mind, that is not coincidence. That is care. That is emotional memory at work. This is a key insight in female psychology that many men overlook, because love doesn't always announce itself with intensity. Sometimes it grows like a quiet garden, tended daily, without applause. You must not rush it. Don't interrogate it. Don't demand clarity too soon, because pressure collapses what needs space to bloom. This is where how to fall in love becomes less about pursuit and more about presence. When someone includes you in their future language, even jokingly, even lightly, they are testing how it feels to say, "someday," with you in the frame. They are listening to their own words to see if they sound right, if they feel natural, if they land softly in the air between you. If they keep doing it, if the future keeps appearing with you in it, then understand this truth. People do not rehearse a future they don't want. They do not build emotional architecture around someone they plan to forget. This is why psychology tricks aren't about manipulation, but about awareness, about recognizing what is already there instead of forcing what is not. When they speak gently of shared tomorrows, they are already emotionally investing, already anchoring you into their inner world, and that matters more than dramatic confessions ever could. Words spoken casually often reveal deeper truth than words spoken loudly. You must be calm here, be steady, be grounded. The moment you try to label it, control it, or accelerate it, you risk interrupting something organic and sincere. That is not how love grows well. Love grows best when it feels safe to imagine freely. When they talk about future memories you'll make together, not as promises but as possibilities, they are expressing hope without pressure, desire without fear, and connection without demand. This is where how to fall in love becomes an art of patience, because the strongest bonds often form when no one is trying too hard to define them. Don't dismiss the gentleness of it. Don't underestimate the power of quiet hope. When someone lets you live in their someday, they are already emotionally choosing you, even if they haven't consciously admitted it yet. This is a recurring theme in female psychology, where feelings surface through implication before declaration, through imagination before articulation. The man who understands this doesn't chase reassurance. He doesn't push for labels. He listens. He notices. He stays present, because presence creates safety, and safety allows love to speak when it's ready. Remember this clearly. People don't accidentally plan a future with someone they don't care about. They don't casually place a person into the long-term picture unless that person already holds meaning. When they talk about one day and you're already there, standing beside them in their thoughts, that is not casual at all. That is emotional truth slipping out when defenses are down. You must respect it, honor it, and let it unfold naturally, because love that is rushed often collapses, but love that is allowed to arrive in its own time becomes solid, reliable, and deeply rooted. This is where psychology tricks meet wisdom, where awareness replaces anxiety, and where how to fall in love becomes less about doing more and more about doing less. Be steady, be attentive, be emotionally available without being demanding. When someone is already holding you quietly in a corner of their heart, the last thing you should do is force them to bring it into the spotlight before it's ready to stand there. That is the silent signal that speaks louder than words, the one most people miss, and the one that tells you everything if you are calm enough to see it. Hey, my friend, thanks for staying with me till the end. Here's something I want you to remember. Love doesn't always announce itself. Real feelings are often quiet, steady, and consistent. If someone shows up without being asked, remembers the small things, protects your feelings, or cares in silence, don't ignore that. Those signals are rarely accidental. My sincere advice to you is this: don't rush, but don't stay blind either. Pay attention to actions, not words. Trust what you feel, not just what you hear. And if your heart recognized someone while watching this, maybe it's time to listen a little more closely, or even take a gentle step forward. Love grows where awareness lives. Take your time, be kind with hearts, yours and theirs, and let clarity come naturally.